Admiral Tejo watched the last Silverian ship limp away from the battlefield. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction as Galatian warships chased after the retreating enemy. "We have won," he said, voice steady despite his excitement. "Send word to the High Council. The Silverians are defeated. The Crimson Nebula belongs to us now." His officers cheered. After 200 years of fighting, the war was finally over. The Galatian hegemony had crushed their oldest enemy. News of victory spread quickly across all 17 Galatian worlds. In the capital city on Galprime, citizens poured into the streets. They danced and sang under the three moons. Some released glowing spores that floated up into the night sky, creating waves of blue and green light visible even from space. Grand Marshal Dojin stood on a high platform in the main square. As the architect of their military strategy, he basked in the adoration of the crowds. "My people," he called out, his voice amplified across the city. "Today begins a new chapter in our history. No more will we fear Silverian attacks on our ships. No more will they challenge our right to rule this sector." The crowd roared their approval. Dojin raised his arms, his ceremonial armor catching the light of the celebration fires. Far below the celebrations, Lieutenant Minji sat in the dim light of the communications center. Her job was to monitor enemy transmissions. Most were boring: damaged ships calling for help, scattered troops trying to regroup. But one message made her pause. "Heavy losses. Request immediate assistance from human outpost in Sector 7. Minji didn't recognize the term human. She sent the message up the chain of command to Commander Hannah. Hannah barely looked at the report. With 3 quick eyes, she scanned the message before dismissing it with a casual wave of her third arm. "Humans?" Hannah said. "Probably some small species from the edge of the galaxy. Nothing important. Mark it as low priority." Minji nodded and filed the report away. But the mysterious message found its way to one more desk. Admiral Sunwoo was old. His scales had faded from bright green to pale yellow. He had fought in more battles than anyone alive. When he saw the mention of humans, his hand trembled slightly. As a child, his nurse had told him stories, tales of a species from a distant blue planet, creatures who looked weak but possessed terrible strength, beings who never gave up, no matter the odds. "Humans," he whispered to himself. "It cannot be." He reached for his communication device, thinking he should alert Grand Marshal Dojin. But then he hesitated. The victory was too sweet. Why spoil it with old myths and legends? "Perhaps," he said quietly, "we should learn more about these humans before we celebrate too confidently." But no one heard his words. The sounds of victory drowned out his caution. In his private chamber, Grand Marshal Dojin reviewed battle reports with satisfaction. The Silverians had fought well, but not well enough. Their remaining ships were scattered and running. Their colonies would soon fall under Galatian rule. "Begin preparations for the victory ceremony," he ordered his aide. "I want it to be the grandest celebration in our history." The aide bowed and left to carry out the orders. Dojin walked to the window and looked out at the city. Lights from the celebrations twinkled below him. He had done it. He had won the war that had raged since before he was born. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the war was far from over. It was merely changing. In the darkness between stars, ships were moving. Ships carrying creatures from a world they had never seen. Creatures with no scales, no extra limbs, no natural defenses, just determination, intelligence, and a history of overcoming impossible odds. The humans were coming, and the celebration on Galprime would not last long. 3 months after the great victory, Captain Juno stood before the Defense Council. His face showed worry that he could not hide. "I must report another patrol ship missing," he said. "That makes 4 ships gone in the past month. They vanished near the outer boundary without sending any distress calls." The council members shifted in their seats. 4 ships was not a small loss. Juno continued, "Our sensors have picked up strange energy patterns in that area. We've never seen anything like them before. They don't match any technology we know. Grand Marshal Dojin frowned from his high seat. Victory had made him even more confident than before. He didn't like hearing about problems. "This is nothing to worry about," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Just Silverian survivors causing trouble. Or maybe pirates taking advantage of the chaos after war. Send more patrol ships. Watch the area more closely." Captain Juno bowed, but his eyes showed he wasn't convinced. As he left the council chamber, he wondered if anyone else would take this threat seriously. That same day, at the trading post of Hescarus, a surprise arrival caused a stir. A badly damaged Silverian ship drifted into the docking area, barely able to fly. The ship's hull was melted in strange patterns. Its engines sputtered and died as it landed. When the doors opened, the crew stumbled out. They were burned, injured, and clearly terrified. Medical teams rushed to help them. "What happened to you?" asked the station commander. One Silverian officer, her blue scales damaged by heat, looked up with wide eyes. "They came to help us," she whispered. "Humans. They found our distress call. But the Galatians attacked them. They fought like nothing we've ever seen." The word spread quickly through intelligence channels. At her desk in the Central Security Complex, Officer Juwu heard the reports. Something in her gut told her this was important. That night, she used her security clearance to access records that were off-limits to her rank. She knew she was breaking rules, but she couldn't ignore her instincts. She searched through ancient archives. She studied diplomatic files left by civilizations now extinct. She even managed to decode some mysterious data from the galactic core. Hour after hour, Juwu pieced together fragments of information. A picture began to form, and it made her blood run cold. Humans came from a planet called Earth. At first glance, they seemed ordinary. 2 legs, 2 arms, no special physical abilities. But they had evolved on a high-gravity world that had shaped them in unusual ways. They advanced from stone tools to space travel in only 500 cycles. She murmured in disbelief, reading the timeline. Such rapid progress was unheard of. Most species took thousands of cycles to achieve the same. What worried her most were the war records. All intelligent species fought wars. That was normal. But humans fought differently. Where Galatians used careful plans and clear strategies, humans were unpredictable. They improvised. They took mad risks that sometimes paid off spectacularly. And they never, ever gave up. "They're like water finding a crack," noted one ancient observer. "Block them one way, they find another. There is no stopping them, only redirecting them." As morning approached, Juwu compiled everything into a report. She knew she should take it to her superior, but something held her back. Would they listen? Or would they dismiss it like Captain Juno's warnings? Meanwhile, on Gal Prime, the grand victory ceremony was reaching its high point. In a massive stadium, with cameras broadcasting to all 17 Galatian worlds, Grand Marshal Dojin stood tall and proud. "Today marks the beginning of a new age for the Galatian people," he shouted. As billions watched, he raised the golden hegemony flag high above his head. The crowds roared. Dojin smiled, basking in his triumph. Then the screens went black. For a moment, confusion spread through the stadium. Technicians rushed to fix what they thought was a simple malfunction. Then a young communications officer ran to Dojin's side. Her scales had turned pale with fear. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking, "an unknown fleet has appeared in our space. They somehow bypassed all our outer defenses without triggering alarms." Dojin stared at her in disbelief. "Impossible. Where are they?" "Sir," she swallowed hard, "they've already reached the Callus Straits. They're only 3 days from Gal Prime." A strange ship entered Galatian space. It moved alone, ahead of the mysterious fleet that had somehow slipped past all defenses. The ship was smooth and sharp-edged, unlike any vessel the Galatians had seen before. It had no visible weapons, yet something about it made the defensive fleet commanders nervous. The ship sent a message on all communication channels. The voice spoke perfect Galatian, without any accent or error. "This is Ambassador Namgung of the United Earth Alliance. We request immediate dialogue regarding the unprovoked aggression against our Silverian allies." In the High Command Center on Gal Prime, military leaders played the message again and again. "United Earth Alliance," one general asked. "What is Earth?" Grand Marshal Dojin paced the room, his scales shifting color with his emotions. "Some minor world from the outer regions," he said. "These humans think they can question our victory, our right to conquer." The generals murmured among themselves. Only Admiral Sunwoo, the oldest among them, remained silent at first. Finally, he spoke up. "We should be careful," he said. "We know nothing about these humans or their capabilities. The way they bypassed our sensor network suggests advanced technology. Perhaps diplomacy would be wiser than confrontation." Dojin turned to stare at the old admiral. "You suggest we show fear? Negotiate with these unknowns as if they were our equals?" He shook his head firmly. "No, I will not approach from a position of weakness. We are the Galatian hegemony. We have just defeated the Silverians after 2 centuries of war. We will not cower before some new species." He turned to his chief of staff. "Prepare a formal welcome for this ambassador. Make it impressive. Show our strength and wealth." Then he lowered his voice. "And move our stealth fleet into position around their approach vector. If these humans try anything, I want them destroyed immediately." The Grand Hall was prepared for the meeting. Galatian guards in ceremonial armor lined the walls. The council members sat on elevated platforms, with Grand Marshal Dojin at the center on the highest seat. When the human delegation entered, many Galatians felt disappointment. The beings looked so ordinary. They walked on 2 legs. They had 2 arms. Their skin was smooth, without scales or protective plates. They seemed fragile. Most surprising was that they wore no breathing apparatus. The Galatian atmosphere contained elements toxic to most oxygen-breathing species, yet these humans breathed it without visible discomfort. Ambassador Namgung was of average height for a human. He had short black hair and calm eyes. 3 other humans accompanied him, 2 male, 1 female. Despite their plain appearance, something about how they carried themselves made the Galatian guards shift uneasily. Dojin spoke first. "Welcome to Gal Prime, center of the Galatian hegemony. We are curious why representatives of an unknown power have entered our territory uninvited." Ambassador Namgung bowed slightly. "Thank you for receiving us, Grand Marshal Dojin. We come on behalf of our Silverian allies, who requested our help weeks ago." Dojin's scales rippled with irritation. The Silverian conflict is a regional matter that does not concern outside powers. When genocide occurs, it concerns all civilized species, Namgung replied calmly. He activated a device on his wrist. Holographic images appeared in the air between them. They showed Galatian warships firing on Silverian cities, cultural centers burning, research stations being bombarded, civilian ships trying to flee, only to be destroyed. The attacks on non-military Silverian targets constitute war crimes under the Galactic Charter, Namgung said, his voice still measured and calm. Article 17 specifically prohibits targeting civilian populations. Dojin waved a hand dismissively. These images are manipulated. The Silverians were developing biological weapons in those so-called research stations. We acted in self-defense. For the first time, the human's face showed emotion. He smiled. It was a simple gesture, lips curving upward to reveal teeth. But to Galatians, who never exposed their teeth except when preparing to attack, it was deeply unsettling. "We anticipated dishonesty," Namgung said, "which is why we brought this." One of the other humans, a shorter male with dark skin, activated a small device in his hand. Instantly, every piece of Galatian technology in the Grand Hall failed. The guards' energy weapons went dead. The communication systems fell silent. Even the environmental controls stopped working. The council members looked around in confusion and growing fear. A localized electromagnetic pulse, explained the human, still smiling. It affects only electronics, not living tissue. Don't worry, the effect is temporary. He paused, then added, "This is technology we developed centuries ago, by the way. Nothing special by our standards." For the first time since the war began, uncertainty showed clearly on Grand Marshal Dojin's face. The main human fleet arrived in Galatian space 3 days after Ambassador Namgung's visit. Military commanders laughed when they saw only 27 ships on their scanners. The Galatian Defense Force numbered in the thousands. "This will be over quickly," General Geo said, looking at the tactical display. They must not understand what they're facing. But something was wrong. When the Galatian ships fired their most powerful weapons, the human vessels simply absorbed the energy. Their shields didn't even flicker. And they moved strangely, changing direction instantly in ways that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Back on Gal Prime, Intelligence Officer Juwu sat alone in her small apartment. On her screen was the report she had compiled about humans, a report her superiors had ignored. Now war was starting, and she knew her people were in terrible danger. She made her decision. Using an encrypted channel that only intelligence officers knew about, she sent a message directly to the human fleet. "This is Juwu of Galatian Intelligence," she transmitted, knowing this act was treason. "I am defecting to prevent needless deaths. Grand Marshal Dojin has set a trap for you at the Tabek Rings. 300 destroyers with cloaking devices are waiting there." She waited, heart pounding. Would they even answer? Would they believe her? A response came almost immediately. A human face appeared on her screen. An older male with lines around his eyes and gray in his hair. "This is Admiral Minho of the United Earth Alliance," he said. His voice was kind, which surprised her. "Thank you for your conscience, Officer Juwu. We actually detected those hidden ships 6 hours ago, but your confirmation helps us. I promise you that no Galatian lives will be lost unnecessarily because of your warning." Juwu stared at the screen. They had already found the hidden ships. How was that possible? Galatian cloaking technology was the best in the sector. You're not going to destroy them?" she asked. Admiral Minho shook his head. "We prefer not to kill when we have alternatives. If you have any other information that might help prevent bloodshed, we would be grateful." The battle, when it came, was unlike anything the Galatians had ever experienced. The human ships moved in formations that seemed impossible, using the gravity of nearby moons and planets to slingshot themselves at speeds Galatian sensors could barely track. But most surprising was their precision. The humans didn't aim to destroy. Their weapons targeted engines, weapon systems, and communication arrays with surgical accuracy. They disabled Galatian ships without killing their crews. Within hours, hundreds of Galatian vessels drifted powerless in space. By the end of the day, over half the mighty Galatian fleet had been neutralized, and the humans had not lost a single ship. On the Galatian command carrier, Grand Marshal Dojin raged at his officers. "How is this possible? They're just 27 ships. They should be dust by now." His tactical officer, scales pale with stress, had no good answers. "Their technology is beyond ours, sir. They seem to know our movements before we make them." Captured Galatian officers were transported to human ships. They expected harsh treatment. In Galatian military tradition, defeated enemies were often tortured for information, then executed or sent to labor camps. Captain Dongya was the first high-ranking officer captured. He stood tall as he was led onto the human vessel, determined to show no fear. But what happened next confused him completely. Human medical staff treated his injuries. He was given clean quarters with a comfortable bed. The food they provided was specially prepared to match Galatian dietary needs. "Why are you doing this?" he finally asked the human guard outside his room. "We are your enemies." The guard, a young female human, looked surprised at the question. "You're a prisoner of war. There are rules about how prisoners should be treated. But we would not treat human prisoners this way." Dong admitted. The guard nodded. "We know, but we're not you. We're not monsters," she explained simply. "War is sometimes necessary, but cruelty never is." Meanwhile, the humans began broadcasting on all Galatian frequencies. They showed evidence of what really happened during the war with the Silverians. They revealed the truth about the civilian research stations that were destroyed. They showed Galatian commanders ordering attacks on refugee ships. These broadcasts reached not just military channels but civilian ones too. Ordinary Galatians, who had celebrated their glorious victory just weeks before, now watched in horror as they learned what had really been done in their name. On 12 Galatian worlds, citizens took to the streets, not in celebration this time, but in protest. They demanded answers. They called for Dojin to resign. The Grand Marshal responded with force. He declared martial law across the hegemony. Security forces were ordered to break up gatherings. Anyone questioning the official narrative was arrested. "This is human propaganda," Dojin announced in an emergency broadcast. "They are trying to divide us. Stand firm with your rightful government." But his words rang hollow. More and more Galatians were beginning to question everything they had been told about the war, and about these humans who fought with such strange restraint. In her new quarters aboard the human flagship, Zhu watched the events unfold with mixed emotions. She had betrayed her people, yes, but perhaps she had also saved them. 1 week after the first battle, the last loyal Galatian ships gathered around their home planet. They formed a protective circle, with their weapons pointed outward. This was their final stand. On the biggest warship, Grand Marshal Dojin prepared to address his forces. His scales had dulled from their usual bright color. He had not slept in days. "Brave warriors of the hegemony," he began, his voice carried to every Galatian ship. "We face an enemy unlike any we have fought before, but we will not surrender. Not to these mammals who dare to judge us. The Galatian hegemony has ruled this sector for thousands of years. We will." Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear open. Where there had been empty black, human ships appeared. They did not approach from outside the defensive ring. They simply appeared inside it, between the Galatian ships and the planet they were protecting. Officers on the command deck gasped. "Impossible," one shouted. "They can't jump through fold space with such precision." "No one can." But the humans had done exactly that. It was a move that broke every rule of space warfare that the Galatians understood. The Galatian commanders waited for the end. With the humans in position to attack the planet, they expected a devastating bombardment. This was, after all, what the Galatians would have done to an enemy homeworld. But the attack that came was strangely limited. Human weapons fired with perfect aim at military targets. Orbital defense platforms went dark. Weapon stockpiles exploded. Communication centers fell silent. Not a single shot hit a civilian area. On the command ship, Dojin was shouting orders when the doors to the bridge slid open. Human soldiers entered, their weapons ready but not firing. Behind them walked Admiral Minho himself. "Grand Marshal Dojin," the human said calmly, "you are now under our protection." Before Dojin could respond, every screen and communication device on every Galatian world lit up with the same message. "This is Admiral Minho of the Human Expeditionary Force. We have disabled your military capability. Grand Marshal Dojin is in our custody. We ask for the immediate surrender of all forces and an end to all attacks against Silverian people. We promise fair treatment to all who lay down their weapons." The High Council of Gal Prime met in emergency session. The decision did not take long. With their military crippled and their leader captured, they had no choice. Within 1 hour, they sent their answer: surrender. 2 months later, former intelligence officer Ju stood in the great hall where peace talks had finally concluded. She watched as Ambassador Namgung and the new Galatian leadership signed the treaty that would shape their future. The terms surprised everyone with their fairness. The Galatians would keep their independence. They would still govern themselves. But for 10 years, human observers would monitor their military to prevent new aggression. and they would pay to help rebuild what they had destroyed on Silverian worlds. After the ceremony, Juhu found herself standing next to Admiral Minho at the reception. "There's something I still don't understand," she said quietly. "You could have destroyed us entirely. Your ships could have bombarded our worlds until nothing lived. Why didn't you?" Admiral Minho considered her question carefully. He looked older than when she had first seen him, more tired. "Long ago, on Earth, humans fought terrible wars against each other," he explained. "We nearly destroyed ourselves many times. Eventually, we learned an important lesson. Real victory isn't about killing your enemy. It's about creating a peace that lasts." He sipped his drink before continuing. "If we had destroyed the Galatian people, we would have become what we fought against. And practically speaking, the galaxy is vast and full of dangers. We don't need more enemies. We need strong allies." In the months that followed, human diplomatic teams helped the Galatians form a new government, one based on more openness and less military control. The old leaders who had ordered attacks on civilians faced justice. New leaders rose who wanted peace. Slowly, carefully, Silverians and Galatians began to work together, with humans helping both sides rebuild trust. Among ordinary Galatians, strange stories began to spread. Whispers about threats from beyond the galaxy edge. Dark things that moved between the stars. Dangers that perhaps only humans, with their strange way of thinking and their stubborn refusal to give up, could help them face. Juhu, now working as a liaison between her people and the humans, heard these rumors too. When she asked Ambassador Namgung if they were true, he neither confirmed nor denied them. He simply smiled that unsettling human smile. For the first time in their long history, many Galatians found themselves feeling something unexpected toward these strange two-legged mammals from a distant blue world. Gratitude. And perhaps something even more surprising. Hope. The end.